All right, let's dive right into this explainer with a story that honestly is probably going to feel deeply, maybe even uncomfortably familiar to a lot of you. Picture this. It's late at night. There's a trader sitting all alone, and the only light in the room is that cold blue glare coming from 6 different monitors. Now, he wasn't a bad trader, or, well, at least that's what he told himself. He did literally everything the so-called experts tell you to do. He watched hundreds of hours of content, read the massive textbooks, memorized every Fibonacci retracement strategy under the sun. You name it, he studied it. And yet, despite all of that textbook knowledge, he just kept losing. Not every single trade, obviously, but just enough to keep him trapped in this perpetual, agonizing state of frustration. You know the feeling, right? Every morning starts with this massive surge of hope, and then every night ends in crushing disappointment. He was just stuck on this treadmill of mediocrity until he finally made an absolutely unthinkable decision.
So I want you to imagine, just for a second, stepping away completely. And I'm not talking about, taking a weekend off or taking a single mental health day to clear your head. I mean, walking away entirely, deleting the apps, shutting down the screens, and just leaving the desk behind. Let's be real. Most traders never even consider this. We're wired to think the answer is always more. More screen time, more analysis, more trying. But what if the only actual way to figure out what's truly holding you back is to completely let go?
All right, let's start with section 1, the obsession, when trading controls you. To really understand why walking away was such a game changer, we first have to look at phase 1 of his journey. This is where the innocent, initial excitement of the market morphed into a full-blown 24/7 fixation. Just mapping out his day shows exactly how it hijacked his life. In the beginning, every chart was an opportunity. But pretty soon, he's checking the market the literal second he wakes up, then again at lunch, right before bed. He'd even wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night just to check a position on his phone. It's like he was walking around with these transparent chart overlays projected over everything he looked at, fighting the urge to throw his phone across the room because, a random tweet unexpectedly tanked his setup. That was his reality. Every single candlestick felt like a life or death moment, and his brain never, ever rested. And because he was constantly plugged in like that, this incredibly toxic dynamic just took over. The market completely hijacked his emotional state. He had essentially chained his entire sense of self-worth directly to his brokerage account balance, and he didn't even realize he was doing it. Think about it. A winning trade didn't just mean a bit of profit. It meant he was an absolute genius, an unstoppable force of nature. But a losing trade? Wow, it completely derailed and ruined his entire day. The market basically held a remote control to his emotions, dictating exactly how he was allowed to feel at any given second. Which brings us to section 2, the inevitable breakdown, chasing hope. Look, when you operate with that intense level of emotional volatility, a massive crash isn't just possible, it's pretty much guaranteed. And what's interesting here is that it wasn't one massive, account-blowing trade right out of the gate. It was a slow bleed. One bad trade, then another, then another. It was the compounding pressure of those small, relentless cuts that triggered a deep psychological tailspin, and that pressure forced him completely off his trading plan. He'd be bathed in the red light of those falling candlestick charts, and suddenly he's taking wild trades he would normally never even look at. He wasn't trading a strategy anymore, guys. He was desperately trying to recover. He was revenge trading. And that sheer desperation leads to this absolute gut punch of a realization. Hope is one of the most expensive emotions in trading. Let that sink in for a second. He wasn't calculating risk anymore. Not at all. He was just sitting there, hoping and praying the market would miraculously turn around. His baseline normal became pure stress. Sleep was completely out of the question. And this heavy, suffocating weight of mental exhaustion just pushed him right to the absolute edge. So, section 3. Walking away entirely. The disconnect. It all came to a head on just a random, ordinary morning. He sat down at his desk, opened up his trading platform, stared at the cascading numbers, and realized he felt absolutely nothing. No excitement, no motivation, not even anger. Just total, empty exhaustion. He had finally hit his breaking point. So he executed a complete and definitive disconnect. Step 1, he closed the platform. Step 2, he picked up his phone and deleted the apps. Step 3, he stopped watching charts and shut off the market news completely. And step 4, he just stopped trading. Period. For the first time in years, he stood up from that desk, turned off the monitors, and walked away. Now, leaving all that behind, the noise of the market, the endless charts, it created this really profound shift in his mental state. At first, honestly, it felt incredibly strange. When you're completely addicted to the chaos, the silence is actually kind of deafening. But then, it just felt peaceful. The market kept moving, obviously. The world kept spinning. But for once, he wasn't running himself into the ground trying to chase it. He had finally found some stillness.
Moving on to Section 4, Mastering the Mind, the Real Problem.
So this stillness actually ushered in his realization phase. In that quiet space, totally away from the glowing screens and the flashing red and green numbers, the really hard truth bubbled up. The strategy he was using wasn't broken, he was. He was basically forced to confront this super painful list of internal roadblocks. He realized he was incredibly impatient, way too emotional, dangerously overconfident after a winning streak, and utterly, hopelessly desperate after a losing streak. When it came down to it, he wanted all the glorious, flashy results of a professional trader without actually putting in the grueling psychological discipline required to earn them.
So, to turn things around, I want you to notice what is actually missing from his to-do list. He didn't go out looking for a new moving average crossover. He didn't drop $1,000 on a course for some secret algorithm. Instead, he tackled his foundation. He read books, and not on chart patterns, but on human psychology. He started exercising just to burn off that pent-up stress and build a solid routine. He wrote in a journal. He became intensely focused on his own daily self-control.
And this brings us to literally the most transformative moment of this entire explainer. He stopped trying to become a better trader and started trying to become a better person. When he looked in the mirror, he was working on building a disciplined, resilient human being. He finally realized that your ultimate trading edge doesn't come from some external analysis. No way. It comes from profound, unshakable internal self-mastery.
And that leads perfectly into Section 5, The Disciplined Return, a Changed Man.
Armed with this entirely new mindset, months passed. The mental noise just completely faded away. And when he finally brought that new atmosphere of calm and peace back to his exact same desk, the contrast was absolutely staggering. The old approach, entirely emotional, wildly impatient, constantly chasing hope. But the new approach, he calmly accepted his losses as just a simple cost of doing business. He deeply, strictly respected his risk parameters. He actually followed his own rules meticulously. The charts on the screens hadn't changed one bit. The market was the exact same unpredictable beast it had always been. But the human being sitting in the chair, he had completely transformed. This right here is what true mastery looks like. When he returned, the results weren't some crazy overnight explosion of wealth or hitting the lottery. Not at all. It was a slow, steady, and incredibly consistent upward climb. Just small profits, carefully managed risk. It was a beautiful equity curve fueled entirely by his newly forged emotional discipline. Which brings us to the absolute core lesson you should take away from all of this today. Success didn't arrive because he finally uncovered some hidden holy grail indicator that unlocked the algorithm. Success arrived because he had the wisdom to step away, identify his own psychological flaws, and conquer his own mind. The market didn't change. The trader changed. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really ponder as you look at your own workspace. So many of us are just caught in this endless cycle, forcing results, fighting the market, and ultimately fighting ourselves. But so often, your absolute biggest breakthrough is just waiting for you in the silence. Do you have the courage to walk away from your own obsessions, even if it's just temporarily, to finally achieve the mastery you're looking for? Will you step away so that you can actually step forward?